Muy bien, vamos a comenzar ya. Silencio, por favor. Bueno, pues buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Covadonga Rodrigo. Voy a moderar esta sesión y como los dos intervinientes hablan en inglés, pues ya a partir de ahora voy a hablar en inglés yo también. So I welcome you all to this session entitled Museums as Spaces for Inclusive Innovation and Technology. And I'm very proud to introduce you to our two keynote speakers of this session. Antonella Poce, she's assistant professor in experimental pedagogy at the University Roma Tre. She has been chairing the Center for Museum Studies since 2017. She's a member of several European networks like EDEN and ICDM SECA. And she's also head or IP for several Erasmus Plus projects. And here on my left, Dr. Tim Coughlan. He's also lecturer in educational technology in the Open University UK, and he focuses his research on using technology to support inclusion, creativity, and openness in learning. His work is part of the OU mission to widen engagement and to create effective educational opportunities for all. Before giving the floor to them, let me make a short commercial advertisement. For all of you that are devoted to using innovation in pedagogy and the appropriate use of technology. I just received it yesterday by mail. I think this is the vintage version, paper-based, paper-printed, of the Innovating Pedagogy report that OU UK, the university where Tim Coughlan comes from, issues every year. You can download it directly from the internet. So I think it's a great effort that all the researchers from the IET in OU UK make, and it might surprise you. So, Doctora Antonella, I give you the floor.
First of all, I would like to thank you, Covadonga, and all the organizers of this interesting and really relevant conference. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here today to tell you about a project of ours in particular, and some data related to the project, but my objective today is to interact with you on some issues that are really urgent and needed to be discussed within such a high profile academic community. So the theme, as you can see, is the social value of the museum as an agent for change. And the topics under discussion that we will try to analyze through this presentation are related to the concept that inspired the research we'll be talking about. Basically, we started from the reflection on the topic of social inclusion and exclusion as two different sides of the same construct. The relation between society and well-being of citizens based in our society, the role museums can have within such a context, the definition of different indicators to evaluate such possibilities, opportunities for the museum, the related effectiveness of the activities that we could put forward and measure through such indicators. And according to all this state-of-the-art analysis of the context of the needs that support research, in this case, the definition of the inclusive memory project that you heard a little bit about in the previous presentations this morning, but that I will try now to explore in a wide sense. And of course, the idea that a different kind of fruition of heritage could play in this different new way of appreciating museums offer. The concept of social inclusion and exclusion, as I was telling you, inclusion and exclusion are different perspectives of looking at the same object. It is a concept that started to be discussed in France in the 70s, and it is not directly related to the idea of not having economical resources, of being poor. In fact, at the time, the definition was related to individuals mentally and physically limited, elderly, abused, drug users, homeless, and so on. So it is not, it can't be uniquely linked to the idea of poverty. It is actually related to the difficulty in participating in one's own community. So it concerns all those who are prevented from fully participating in the social system. And taking all this into consideration, we reflected on some questions that you can see here. So if you are excluded, is there a way to re-establish the conditions of active participation? Active participation is not just something that you deal with to help people. Of course, that is important, but you don't help only the people that are excluded. You help also those who are included, of course, because the benefit is for the whole society involved. In which way museums can facilitate this process? Can museums be able to stop this road to marginalization of some categories of citizens? These were the questions that led us to develop our research. Reflecting on the role of museums, we can't forget that museums used to be places where a certain kind of exclusion was part of their original dimension. In fact, the validating role of museums has always implied the automatic exclusion of certain groups, considering that museums have always played the role of those communicating certain concepts, certain knowledge, a one-way perspective. So that is why, if we want museums to have a different role, a changing role, an helping role in what is social inclusion, as we defined it previously, a change also from the museum perspective must be carried out. And we see we were saying that what we mean by social exclusion is related to the limited accessibility of different kind of categories to their communities' life in very different ways. So facilitating the representation of groups that has not been considered by the museum so far, it is possible, that's at least our hypothesis of work, it is possible to improve and widespread well-being. And this kind of well-being can be measured in a way increasing participation of such groups in the social life we are all involved in, we are likely involved in. What happened? A change actually happened, especially from the 90s in UK, because different kind of policies were started. So we could say that in UK this process started top down to facilitate this change of perspective, of attitude from the museum point of view, starting policies that were connected to public involvement and development, but not strictly linked to the idea of improving finances, let's say so, instead of improving the relation with the territory, the context where museums were based. And in particular, here I quote the Department of Culture, Media and Sport and the Heritage Lottery Fund that have been implementing different policies aimed at to support inclusion and accessibility projects implemented by local museums in particular. Of course, local museums cannot, support and solve such a huge and multi-faced problem. That is why, as a group, in our university, in Roma Tre University, in the Center for Museum Studies that I'm representing, we thought of a wide project. And here I tried to summarize the story of this project, because we started some years ago already. The first little project, small project, was started thanks to bilateral agreement, bilateral project funded by UCL, actually, University College of London, within the Rome funding scheme. UCL already, at the very beginning of the Brexit issue, really supported the possibility to have bilateral agreements with European universities in order to fight the Brexit issue at the very beginning. And within this program, they supported bilateral agreements, and we had the possibility to develop our inclusive memory project in a small context within the Rome territory. And about those results I will tell you more later on. From this first instance, we developed a university project because the university, our university, Roma Tre University, was supporting new kind of researches within the Roman, again, the Roman territory, but enlarged to different kind of departments. And we proposed this project involving 5 different departments. We have foreign languages and literature, architecture, engineering, mathematics, I'm missing someone, our department, of course, the Department of Education. Trying to develop the project from different various perspectives in different kind of environments and topics. And that project was funded, and it is ongoing. 30 different professors in different fields are engaged in this project at the moment. Then we submitted the project at European level, and I'm looking at Covadonga because she's directly involved, and we need to keep fingers crossed because we submitted the project, and we hope it will be funded. We don't know still, so we'll see. But anyway, we already, of course, created an international consortium, and we hope it will be possible also to scale it up to an Horizon project, maybe. We'll see what happens. Anyway, what is the project about? The main idea of the project, you will see that according to the dimension of the different interpretation of this project, of course, we devise different objectives, but the main objectives of the project are the ones that are listed here. To build a common and shared memory realized through a museum-based social inclusive system, to enhance the potential benefits of the cooperation between higher education institutions and museums. This is another aspect which we really care about, so the cooperation between university and museums. Support social inclusion derived from teaching methodology, digital tools use, and cross-sectional skills development. So there's a focus on a critical use of technology within the museum environment for education, and of course linked to the development of cross-sectional skills development. The idea of developing museums as teaching and learning environments, and to support, of course, universities' role as active social actors and cultural integration facilitators. Which sort of activities we have been developing and actually are ongoing within the university project I was mentioning before. Of course, all the activities foreseen are addressed to work with different kind of disadvantaged categories. The 4 C skills are the ones that we would like to encourage to support through these kind of activities to be carried out, of course, within museum environments, but in a close cooperation between university researchers and museum educators. The use of new digital tools, design and implementation for the construction of a shared and collective social memory. As you can see here, there are different kind of activities that are already foreseen and that will be put in place, from the organization of workshops with students, but a huge part of the project is devoted to training with teachers, with primary school teachers, for instance, with museum educators, with groups of immigrants, refugees, working with associations that are devoted to the integration of such categories. We will organize Memory Art Cafe with elderly people suffering from Alzheimer, for instance, but we will also organize science and mathematics teaching and learning activities within museum environments. We have a partnership with one of the biggest science centers in Italy, Città della Scienza, and with them we have been already working on this, using mathematics as an integration language. Then we have all the activities related to the more technical and engineering side of the story that is going to be carried out by the engineering department, but also in cooperation and in and basing their activity within museum environments. The other thing I need to mention is that there's a partnership between our university and a network, a big network of Roman museums, Musei in Comune, which collects about 100 museums based in Rome. So within those environments, eye tracking for user modeling, image classification, and so neural networks work will be carried out within those environments, working with the users that we will meet during the activities. So lots of things going on. Of course, the part taking into consideration that our department, the Department of Education, is the leading department of this project. Of course, a huge part of the project will be devoted to enhance, support the relation between school, museums, and the territory. Here the idea is that of supporting teachers, involving them with training, design and realization of teaching and learning paths, helping digital tools use, helping them to solve the complexity of the classes they meet every day. And we think, of course, that education can facilitate diversity, understanding, and their interpretation as an added value for society. So time is running, and I would just want to give you some details of the first part of the project we have been carried out with UCL. And the results from this first pilot activity we carried out in Rome. I will go very fast, just to tell you that, of course, this project was started together with UCL researchers and Ellen Chatterjee in particular, and was carried out at Museo di Roma, Palazzo Braschi. We'll tell you what we did. First, a view of the museum, Museo di Roma, Palazzo Braschi, that you can see here is based in Piazza Navona. This is the other entrance, but it's between two different wonderful places in Rome. Museo di Roma was created to protect the memory of those parts of the city that were gradually disappearing. So all the objects that are present, the collection of the museum is related to preserve the memory of the town from basically from the 16th to the 19th century, of objects that were going to disappear in a way, not too much cared about, let's say so. So also the meaning of this museum was closely connected to those objectives that we had in our project. The first group of students who participated in the project, and the results that I have here are related to this first pilot activity, come from an outskirt school, an agricultural secondary school, and so the data related to this class composed of 21 pupils, and within such a class we had 7 pupils with specific learning disorders and 3 pupils with physical disabilities. So some of those categories were fairly represented. Just a few words on the methodology. So we worked at the Museum di Roma Palazzo Braschi. We organized 3 different museum parts within the collection, and the students in that case took 2 visits at the museum to evaluate the impact of such visits that were devoted to develop citizenship and social inclusion competencies at that specific time. We used the positive and negative well-being umbrellas developed by UCL researchers, and then we had also a focus group to confirm what the umbrellas were revealing. We worked through different kinds of methodologies, mainly object-based learning, visual thinking, and then critical thinking enhancement through the support of their work that started from the discussion that they devised looking at the paintings, and 3 where I told you there were 3 different parts related to 3 different main knots of meaning. And there the river flows, street festivals, political changes, and new society. Again, the themes were strictly connected to active citizenship and social inclusion. So what they did, we organized the group in small groups. The discussion started from the observation of museum objects, and of course the main theme was the city of Rome, their relation, the idea they had of Rome before visiting the museum. Take into consideration that out of 21 pupils, maybe 1 already visited a museum, but they never thought of the museum as a place nice to go. So that was their first time. So their impressions visiting the museums, and in what way the places and the visit could be connected to a particular event or emotion in their lives. So their memory and the possibility to share through a discussion and create a new memory all together within the museum. You have details, but I won't go through that, of the visit, of how it worked. You have a description here also of the different paths that we devised together with experts in the field, as educators or researchers in education, but together with our colleagues based at the museum. I won't tell you more about this, but if you want, we can talk about it later. These are the umbrellas for the assessment that we carried out together with UCL researchers. As you can see, these umbrellas describes a status that the visitors could have experienced through the visit. There's a positive area, positive umbrella, and negative, of course, umbrella, to see if they confirm their impressions. The average positive well-being index for each student was quite high. You see 3.5 points for and the river flows and political transformations and new society, and 4.2 for street festivals. The street festivals collection really involved the students. The results were positive, taking into consideration these well-being measurement values. Here are some graphics for each path, but again, we can discuss them, and they were fairly positive. I'm going to hand the focus group confirmed as well. I can end with this quote from one of the students, of the pupils, who said that to see Rome and how the citizens in early times lived the city made me think a lot. In the past, like in the feasts on the streets, the citizens met all together. Today, with the use of technology, we are isolated. Communication is reduced. So this comment really impressed us, but supported us also in the possibility to think of new ways of using technology to increase, instead to support communication and interaction. So, as I said, we are working hard on this project. Besides the UCL cooperation, we are working on the local university project, and hopefully we'll be working at international level on the same concepts. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Antonella. I ask you for apologies because I have the ungrateful work for making pressures on the speakers.
There are so many things to say. Maybe I have to go here.
Okay, Dr. Antonella is going to share with us the rest of these days here in the Congress, so you can join her and ask her more about this interesting job. Okay, now I give the floor to Dr. Tim Coughlin.
Hello. Oh. Yeah. Buenos días. Gracias por la invitación y gracias por tu atención. I think the program has been very nice because today we've talked about museums and universities, and some of what I will say hopefully will build on that. Some of it's directly talking about universities and museums and how we work together, and some of it is hopefully relevant to that. So I will first introduce myself a little bit and where I've worked. So I work at the Institute of Educational Technology at the Open University, and Kova gave a very nice introduction to a report that we produce every year, so I don't have to do that, so that's nice. Yeah, the Open University in the UK shares some similarities with UNED, but of course there are also differences. Some of the work I will talk about is also from a big project called Horizon, where I worked with the University of Nottingham and a lot of partners on what we call digital economy research. So this is how we can take advantage of new technologies for the benefit of everyone, but in the context of institutions and different businesses and organizations. But to give some background to the Open University and why we feel that inclusion and accessibility is so important, it really is a part of our mission. This is the statement of the Open University's mission, which is to be open to people, places, methods and ideas, and to promote educational opportunity and social justice by providing a high quality education to all who wish to study. And what this looked like back in the day, I hope you can see the images up there. It's very much, from the beginning, always had a connection with technology. And back then it was providing students with their books and their materials, and then also having television programs late in the night, which were lectures, you know, and this is how it worked in the 70s and back then. Now things are kind of different. We still have books, and students like books. A lot of students, you know, really appreciate having a book with their course. But most of the study is online, and it involves use of a VLE as campus students often use, and different ways of interacting with each other through seminars and webinars and things like this. But we have maintained this broader mission to educate all people beyond the idea of taking a university degree. So we still work with the BBC on a lot of their documentary programs, and then that links into our open education, our free courses, and the way that we provide a pathway through from that. So people will watch a documentary, then they will come to the website, which is directed at the end of the documentary. And then we will say, you know, are you interested in learning more? Take a free course. Move from that. Maybe you're interested in doing a degree, you know, in looking at working closer with the university. And in terms of the social mission, it is really a huge part of what we do. So we have over 20,000 students who declare a disability currently studying with us. We are open to anybody. They didn't need any qualifications. They can sign up without any, they can have left school without anything, or come back 20 years later, 30 years later. We support students in prisons, and a lot of our students combine work and study, so they're really doing this in a pressured situation. And often, as I say, if they've come without qualifications, without that educational background, then they need to develop confidence and study skills and digital skills, all these other things. So the talk I wanted to give today is really trying to give a few ideas that have come out of different research projects, and trying to understand myself and to discuss some of the things that may be transferable. So I tried to come up with 3 points. The first point is really, if you want to design for inclusive innovation, you start with the audiences who have challenges, who face challenges, and then you look beyond that. You look at how you can broaden out for innovating for all people. The second idea is that we can explore sort of simple new ways of allowing people to be creative, and this can open up ways of thinking and participation that are different and people can really engage with. And the third idea is that we need to consider accessibility from the beginning of the design process, so we don't just think about it later stages. And when we do that, we can make something that is innovative but also inclusive. So, as I said, I'll try and explain this through a few projects. And the first one of those projects was called Out There and In Here. And it was a project about developing social inclusion through distributed team collaboration. And the inspiration to this project was the challenges that our students face around fieldwork. So fieldwork is an essential component of learning in a number of subjects, but it's also challenging. It's not something that students particularly with mobility issues or any problems that relate to visiting these sites can actually engage with very easily. So that was an inspiration to a problem that we thought, you know, should be worked on. And actually we had staff in the university who had been working on this, some of my colleagues, for several years, and thinking about how you can give a fieldwork experience to a student who cannot actually get into this site, this maybe a quarry or a hill mountain site. In this case, very much to look at geology features, so the rocks, and understand the history of that site. So they were looking at using technology to explore this. And from that came the inspiration for Out There and In Here, which really tried to answer the question of how a kind of distributed collaboration can be designed to support equitable learning between the field sites and indoor locations, people at a distance. And we were funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council in the UK, and we worked with Microsoft on this. And really what we produced was a kind of high-tech indoor location that could provide something of a fieldwork experience. So these learners would not be at the field site, but we did everything we could to kind of design this space where they could see what was happening and where they could use different computers and resources to become a part of the team that conducted the field work. So there's an image there which I hope kind of shows the room. It had like a tabletop computer, different laptops and books and things projected on the wall to show the field site. And they would receive information from these group of learners who visited the field site. So those learners would be working there and conducting an inquiry and sending things back to this indoor location. So you can see there that they might be measuring things and identifying different rocks, and then they would send things back and communicate with the team indoors, and they would conduct activities such as trying to come up with a hypothesis about what was going on in this place. And what was really interesting about this project was that we started with an important idea that we could use technology to enable access. But actually what became really interesting was that this was a really interesting learning activity, a structure that anybody could engage with. And it created the roles of these different people who played different, had different perspectives and could take part as a team. So to kind of show the conclusions that we found from that, the learners out there in the field could really benefit from getting information from in here. So if you're walking around a field site, okay, you might have a mobile device, but it's not very easy to start looking things up and finding information, whereas those indoor people could really provide that in a useful way. And of course, those in-here learners could get some kind of experience and access to that field trip that they wouldn't otherwise have. But there is a challenge with this. There was a tension or a responsibility, really, that the people in the field had to remember those people indoors. They had to look after them and make sure they were listening. And sometimes the people indoors could feel, oh, okay, they're not responding to me, they're ignoring me, and that kind of ruined the experience. So there was this interesting responsibility between the two groups. Those in here could provide value, and those out there could provide that field experience. And we tried this out with a number of different subject matter and different things, and this is a further example where in Cambridge we got some historical records, and the people indoors were working with those historical records, and the people outdoors were investigating things like historic grave sites where famous people were buried and things like this. So we took that concept and really took it quite far. And as I said, the principle of this was really that you start with the audience who face the challenges, so in this case mobility impairments, and then you sort of work outwards, and you can create things that are really interesting for a wide group of people. So I'll move on to a second project, and this is a project called Art Maps. And unlike the last one, this really was based in museums. And this was a project funded as part of the Horizon Digital Economy Research Hub. I'm working with Tate, University of Exeter and University of Nottingham, a really interdisciplinary project. I think there was some talks yesterday where people were saying the importance of interdisciplinary work, and this was quite an extreme way quite interdisciplinarity, because it combined everything from geography to art, history, computer science, all these things, and galleries, obviously. In this case, the prompt for the project was this idea of open data and data sharing, and actually what you can do with it. So Tate, in about, I think, 2014, decided, okay, we'll share the data about our collection, all this information, the metadata about the works in the collection. We'll put it online. And obviously when you do that, you then think, well, okay, now what? What's the point of this? How do we get the public to engage with it? And the idea, initial idea that came out was, okay, they can work with us, this crowdsourcing, they can tell us more information about the works of art. And so you can see, they put this up online, made it available to anybody, but you have to have some sort of structures or ways to engage people with it. And one of the things we came across was really the idea of location, and this idea of art and location. So what you can see there, I'm not sure how readable that is, but it's kind of all the data that we have for a particular artwork and that they had released. And one of the things there is places. So how does this work of art relate to particular locations, places in the world? And actually, there was already some data. So, some artworks had some information saying this relates to a particular location. And we took this concept, and as I say, as an interdisciplinary team, there was a number of public events and ideas of ways of working with the public to explore what they thought about location and art. So we had people walking around London trying to identify the view that was in a particular painting, and we had actually artists themselves talking about how they thought about space and place and location and art. And it resulted in this web application called Art Maps, so a website that really built on top of a mapping system with a simple premise, really, that we should support the creation of links between the artworks and the locations, and also to explore these, so you could read the map and look at different places and say, okay, what art do we think is connected to this location where you are? And this was, again, trialed and tested out with things. There were terminals put into the galleries that allowed people to play with this, and people would use it mobile on their phones and things like that, and at home as a website. So as I said, this was quite a simple idea, but it created these really big questions. Like, what does it mean when you link an artwork to a location? And where is an artwork? Does it really exist in a specific place? And also, who decides? So if we have a lot of people using this, we had, I think, a big debate in the project, and I think it comes down to that interdisciplinarity of whether there was a correct location for an artwork, or whether that was just not a concept that should really occur. So I'll go through some examples. And I think, well, Antonella might have a view on this one. So, this is
connected to what we did within the Museo di Roma Palazzo Braschi, this idea of linking their impression, their experience of the place to the work of art they were looking at physically. Actually, you are doing it at a distance. So.
Yeah, this is at a distance. So the people doing this would not have been in Rome. And that plays into this a little bit, how the activity works. But obviously, this is a Turner watercolor of Rome Colosseum. And so we asked people, where does this belong? And I hope you can see the map. There's some dots there, and each dot represents where people were putting this. So what were they actually doing? Well, when we asked people, what they were actually doing was going onto the street view on Google Maps and trying to figure it out, and going, oh, yeah, okay, maybe it's here, maybe... But people had different ideas, as you can see from the dots. And there were some quotes about this, so people were saying, you know, it's kind of like a treasure hunt, like a game. And they were discovering a place, they're discovering a new place through the artworks and the maps. So that was nice, but that's quite a simple example. Here's another one that gets a bit more interesting. So this is a painting of a zoo. And it's slightly fantastical, and it's, yeah, as I say, it depicts a zoo, a scene in a zoo. This is what happened here in terms of where people put it. So people said there's a location, Regent Park Zoo in London, which has inspired this scene. And, you know, they're then looking at this zoo again, in a bit like they did with the Colosseum. Where does it fit? And it's interesting to note that the Tate's website information actually had this detail that the artist had been visiting Regent's Park Zoo, which is a zoo in London, and went there as a child, and that's kind of where he conceived the painting. So we can see people are inquiring about what's going on. The interesting thing here, though, really is it's not necessarily a physical perspective on Regent's Park Zoo, it's just inspired. So one of the things that came out of this, that was a particularly interesting quote, it's an ideal zoo. It's a zoo, but it's not necessarily that zoo. It's a place of the mind, was what someone said. And that example comes out very strongly in an artwork like this. So this is a Giuliano piece, Radio Wind Towers, and the intention is it's not a particular motorway, it's just a motorway. And I don't know if this image makes it very clear, but people placed this all over the world in different locations. And they said, you locate it through your personal connection, and they have a clear memory of a place that can be associated with this work. But it was an interesting exercise because they never thought about putting that on a map. So to keep moving on, where is an artwork becomes a really interesting question. You know, what is it depicting? Where is it housed? Where does the artist live? Does it remind you of something? This simple idea became really quite interesting. We'll try to keep moving, but I'll say briefly that we found this was really interesting in terms of some previous work around the idea of allowing openness to interpretation through the use of ambiguity. So this idea that if we design things to be a bit ambiguous, they become interesting. And secondly, the idea of open authority. So this idea that we need to support people, audiences to museums, to actively say, this is what I think about this. And you know, it's not either or, it's not, oh, this is the institution's view and this is the public's view. It should be more of a both, a combination. So the answer is really, you know, where is an artwork? It's any of those things, and it's up to the individual to decide. I will move forward because I think there's limited time. But as I say, the second principle that was interesting to us was that we could explore these simple, novel ways of getting people creative and open up new ways of thinking. So I move on to the final project that I wanted to talk about. And this is a current project that we're working on in the university. And it's called Our Journey. And the inspiration to this was really working with our disabled students group. So we have communities in the university of disabled students come together to talk about issues. And we're working with them, and they said, you know, there's a lot of things that we would like you to explore and help with. And they really come down to this idea of communicating what their journey through study is. So the problems they face and the barriers, how they overcome them. And there are lots of things that happen in a student's journey over time, but they didn't feel able to communicate this to the university. And we're developing this project, as I say, with our disabled students group, with the social enterprise DNA, with JISC, who are technical support and provide funding in the UK. We do quite a lot of participatory design work with the students to understand what it is we're trying to design, really looking at how they might represent their journey. And the image there is of Snakes and Ladders, the game. And this was a common reference of what it's like to study and learn. You feel that you are getting somewhere and then you're not. So there's lots of findings there, but again, I won't take too long over them. We found that we should really allow them to express the positive things and the negative things, and that actually they really didn't want something that was like another assignment, another piece of coursework, but something that was kind of fun and had a difference to it. So we came up with the idea of our journey, which is a simple structure that allows them to express what happened to them, how they felt about it, and different things that then these simple structures combine to make up a journey. And I will just show a quick video of this so you can understand that.
My name's Angela and this is my student journey. I decided to register for a module with the Open University. It was my first module and I wasn't sure where I was going to go from there, but I thought, well, I'll give it a try. I must admit I was really nervous at the start. It was maths, my first module, so it was quite hard in some ways, but it was also strangely confidence boosting. It was interesting, and we did stupid things like singing songs about mathematics in the bar, and it was really good to sort of have other people who I could talk to about such a strange subject, because it's not a thing you talk about down the pub with people very often. In fact, most conversations go, oh, I'm terrible at maths. So it was really nice to actually be proud of being good at it. I was quite nervous about doing an exam in mathematics, which I hadn't done for a very long time. And in fact, when I'd done maths before, I'd had a very bad exam experience. So I was quite nervous about it all. But I got used to it and I started studying for the exam and I got through it and I did well enough. Not brilliant, but well enough. And that was good. So I felt quite reassured that I could get through the whole thing. So that's how it started and I got through my first module, hooray! And it was hard work, but it was worth it. Very early on, after going to the first tutorial, we decided to set up a study group and I met with some other people. That was really helpful because it didn't feel like anyone was judging you when you were going along and meeting with other people. So there was a woman who was Finnish and English was her second language and she was learning Spanish, and I thought, well, she can do it and she's willing to try.
So I will stop that there because we're running low of time, but this is all online. And I will put up a picture at the end, which will show some of that. I think the point I want to make here for this project is particularly that we've made something with a kind of visual style and interaction, and it's interesting and novel, but underneath it all, it's very much standard building blocks. And this is because we thought about the accessibility from the beginning. So we consider people who need to navigate with a keyboard and people who use screen readers and all these things. And we run testing to check things like contrast and what happens when people zoom in. So we're still working on that. And to me, I think this new project hopefully has all three principles. So we started with the audience of disabled students, but actually there's tools for everybody. We explore novel but simple ways of being creative. So, you know, they create their journey, but it's not a difficult thing. Anybody can do it, get started. And we consider the accessibility from the beginning of the process. So we can manage to make something that is interesting and new, but it's also inclusive for everybody. So I will end it there. Muchas gracias, and thank you.
Okay, is there any question in the room for the speakers? Yeah, is there a microphone or? Yeah, there are two questions. Anyone from the organization? Do we have a microphone? Yes. Yes? Okay. No, it's for the recording. Yeah, they are recording the session, so be calm, we have no hurry. So.
Hi. This one is for Tim. So the art map project that you have, is it an open source project? Like can you have that program run anywhere?
I would think so. The website address is up there. I'm trying to remember. So the data underpinning it is open. I believe the code would have been shared on GitHub as well. It's a little while ago. So the project, it was like 2015, 2016. So I don't remember for sure, but I think, it should be. And if not, you can contact me and I'll put you in touch with the developer. Yeah.
Thank you very much to you both, because the presentation were very, very nice and very exciting for us. I will have to both the same question. If you have implemented your application, and which is the behavior of the learners who are using the results, I mean the teachers. The teachers how are they using, or how?
So teachers, we have different kind of teachers involved. We have our in-training teachers, so the students in our Department of Education who are qualifying to become teachers. And we have, in-service teachers participating in this kind of activities. And the attitude is very different. So in-service teachers show a little resistance to the use of different kind of teaching and learning tools and methodologies. They still consider the idea of using the museum just to go for a school trip, and they are not involved in the teaching and learning activity, and they tend to leave the museum educators work on with the pupils. Instead, in training teachers, at least this is a good news for us. I really appreciated the activities. They are getting more and more involved. They devise different teaching units, taking into consideration the museum objects as part of their teaching and learning programs, and also the use of different technologies to support their teaching and learning. And they have been working with pupils with good results also from the point of view of the pupils' involvement. So that is really important to us as a feedback. With in-service teachers is a little bit more difficult, but they're at least they're starting. Thank you for your question. Yeah.
For you, Tim, is it more related with the administrative people or whatever the one is using?
It depends on the project. So I think the first project was very much we work with the tutors, so we have them in the field site and indoors and things like that. So they some tutors are really like technology and want to involve themselves in our research. But yeah, the Our Journey project is, wasn't really able to explain, but there's several ways I think we will use it. One is the feedback at scale, so getting many people to give us their journeys and understand the student experience in a different way. So that would be of use, to administrators, and potentially if we have a lot of students from one qualification or course, then of interest to the academics running the course. But it's also, there's a lot of interest in, I suppose, more efficient support for students. So one of the ideas there is that this can help to guide students if they tell us there's an issue with something, finance, or they're feeling bad or ill or something, then the system can give them some initial guidance or tell them who to talk to. We try to involve different groups of staff because particularly with accessibility, it's the whole institute. There's people in so many different parts of the institution that have to be involved to make the learning accessible.
Muy bien. ¿Nadie más en la sala quiere preguntar? Muy bien, pues nada, cerramos la sesión y damos un aplauso a los speakers.